Listen!
Hello everyone, and welcome to my very first episode of my very first series on
Wait for it!
my very first YouTube channel. Hooray! In this first series, we're going to be discussing a juggernaut in the video game industry. A series that has consistently spit out banger after banger, boasting a total of 6 games with a score of 95 or above on Metacritic, including the one at the very top of the list with the score of 99, Metacritic's greatest game of all time, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, or OOT! Shout out to Breath of the Wild for coming in a close second with a score of 98. Before I get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to the general producer and creator of the Legend of Zelda series, Shigeru Miyamoto, who has taken on the role of guardian in the series to ensure that even with all the thematic and geographical changes throughout the series, the gameplay has never faltered. Thank you, Shigeru. The Legend of Zelda series is widely renowned for its huge, visually captivating, transversable worlds and its puzzling dungeons. The series boasts an expansive list of 20 mainline titles, which would balloon up to 48 if you include things like remakes, remasters, and spin-offs. With such a huge catalog of video game titles, most of which are set eons apart from each other, it could be difficult to piece together the rich history of Hyrule and its neighboring lands from just the video games alone. Luckily for us, Nintendo has released some really great pieces of literature in recent years. There's a ton of information and amazing pictures on pretty much everything you can find in the Zelda universe, from different worlds, locations, characters, races, enemies, dungeons, and even lesser known items. If you consider yourself a hardcore Zelda fan, or even just a fan of the fantasy genre in general, you should really check out these books. I have read through all the Zelda literature I could get my hands on, and I'm here to help you try to piece together the true story between the books and the video games. With the successful movie adaptations of other popular video game franchises in recent years, The Legend of Zelda may very well be the next Nintendo icon to make the leap to the big screen. So this is the perfect time to review the series and to speculate where the big screen adaptation of The Legend of Zelda series can take us.
Hey, listen!
Okay, let's get started with some quick backstory omitted in the game version. Ocarina of Time takes place in the land of Hyrule, in the period known as the Era of the Hero of Time. This era follows the Force Era and the events of the Four Swords adventures. The Link of this era was born during the Great Hyrulean Civil War, a war between the various races living in the land of Hyrule. How awesome would it be to see a live-action Goron clan clash with the Zora tribe? To escape the flames of war, one mother fled into the Kokiri Forest, also known as the Forbidden Forest, where its guardian spirit, the Great Deku Tree, promised to raise and protect her son, believing he was destined to save the world. Although young Link was taken in and raised as a Kokiri, there was one particular feature of the Kokiri that he lacked. Unlike all the other Kokiri, Link was without a fairy companion. This made young Link an easy target for Mido, the leader of the Kokiri, who would slander Link with insults like defective twerp and no fairy loser. But young Link ain't no punk, so one day he grew tired of the disrespect and fought back, actually getting the better of Mido before his fairy friend flies in to rescue him and the fight is broken up by the Great Deku Tree. But not everybody in Kokiri is a big fairy racist. There's also Saria, who proudly proclaims that Link is her very best friend, with or without a fairy. Link is lucky to have Saria, as it seems she is the only other person he trusts enough to tell about his dream vision that he keeps having, which all signs point to is the opening scene of the game. Now comes the first discrepancy between how the story played out in the video game and how it could potentially play out on the big screen. This could also give us clues as to how Nintendo may need to make slight changes to the story of the video game to make it work as a movie. In the game, Link finds the slingshot as he is exploring the game's first dungeon, but my other sources say that Link actually invented the slingshot himself, although be it for a much more childish purpose than saving the world. But hey, some of the greatest inventions in history were discovered by accident. He also didn't have to run around the forest looking for a sword, or spend his hard-earned money on a shield, but more on that in a bit. Later that night, when most everyone is sleeping, an evil being named Goma enters the forest and wrestles its way into the Great Deku Tree. Almost paralyzed, the Great Deku Tree is barely able to call out, "Navi, go and bring the boy without a fairy." When Link is awakened and sees the fairy, he is overjoyed, to say the least, and his first instinct is to go brag to Mido. Yeah, let's see what he has to say now. But before he can even make it out the house, he falls through a hole in the floor that this lunatic is still cutting. You a real life hater for that, Mido. Before Link can get an explanation out of him, Navi blurts out that the Great Deku Tree is in trouble, so the three of them go to see what's wrong. In the video game, Link is tasked with finding his own sword and shield before being permitted to see the Great Deku Tree, but I can see how wandering around looking for a chest with a sword in it could be pretty unbelievable in the context of a movie, so we'll be on the lookout for more changes like this throughout the series. By the time they make it to the Great Deku Tree, he is already in a paralyzed state and unable to talk due to the curse the evil being has put on him. It didn't take long for them to notice the terrifying, parasitic, armored arachnid queen, Goma, crawling around the Great Deku Tree. "Where is the stone?" she screeches before she burrows her way into the Great Deku Tree. Without a second thought, and armed with only his trusty slingshot, the courageous young Link runs in after the monster. Mido, not wanting to be one-upped by his rival in front of Saria, runs in right behind him with his legendary Kokiri sword in hand. As they travel deeper into the Great Deku Tree, they are met with the horrible sound of the Arachnid Queen chomping away at the Great Deku Tree from the inside as she searches for the stone. Once Goma notices the two Kokiri children coming in after for her, she attacks, and the first big boss battle is on. Link goes into attack mode with his trusty slingshot, but he struggles to penetrate the tough armor of Goma. But Mido, on the other hand, freezes up, forcing Link to dive in and save him from a fatal blow. After a few minutes of Link shooting everything except the monster's obvious weak point, and Mido running around chucking pebbles in Goma's general direction, Navi finally fulfills her main duty in the game and navigates young Link to the boss's weak point, allowing him to deal the killing blow. Now, there are some pretty big changes in this version. Aside from Milo's participation in the fight against Goma, the dungeon inside the Great Deku Tree is completely omitted, and by extension, the enemies and puzzles residing inside him are as well. That's right, no pesky Deku Babas, savage plant monsters, Skulltulas, giant spiders, or nutty Deku scrubs getting in Link's way. Must be nice, am I right? This Link still has yet to get his feet wet in actual sword combat. What's up with that? Oh, and if Goma seems familiar to you, it may be because she appears as a dungeon boss across multiple eras in video game titles. Although I was excited to see the non-video game interpretation of a Zelda dungeon, I also understand that it may not make sense story-wise to include every dungeon we saw in the game, and this first dungeon does seem like the perfect choice to admit, given how organic this alternate version plays out. Still, hopefully it won't be too much longer before we get to see a full-fledged dungeon. Back outside, the Great Deku Tree congratulates the boys on breaking the curse, but he also reveals that he was already doomed before their battle even began. He then tells Link he could read Goma's thoughts as he was being eaten alive. Turns out, she too had been cursed by the king of the people of the Black Desert. His plans are to capture the Triforce and use its power to rule over the world. It is now, a mere seconds before death, that the Great Deku Tree finally has the time to tell Link about the creation of the known world, the land of Hyrule, and the all-powerful Triforce. The Triforce. The Triforce was left behind the creators of Hyrule, the three goddesses. Din, the goddess of power, created the earth. Nayru, the goddess of wisdom, brought law and order to the land. Farore, the goddess of courage, gave birth to all life forms. After Hyrule's creation, when these goddesses returned to the heavens, they left behind the three triangles of the Triforce, and entrusted a fourth goddess, named Hylia, and a legion of spirits and fairies to protect it and the land they created. The Triforce has the power to grant the wish of the first person to touch it. The Triforce does not distinguish between good and evil, so it will fulfill both good and bad wishes. It is not known why the Triforce was left behind. The evil king plans to use the Triforce to plunge Hyrule into darkness, and it is up to Link to muster up the courage to stop him. The Great Deku Tree then gives Link the spiritual stone of the forest, the one that Goma was looking for, and tells him to go to Hyrule Castle and give the stone to the princess there. Of course Link accepts unhesitantly, which is a testament to his great courage, because the Kokiri were told that they would die if they ever left the forest. But don't worry, that's not really true. In reality, they would only age normally, just as Hylians do if they venture too far away from the Great Deku Tree's magic. And that is because the Kakarai's people's roots can actually be traced back to Hylians that decided to venture away from society and live amongst nature. The Great Deku Tree also instructs young Link to carve a shield from his corpse, as the magic in his wood would give it strength and help protect him from all types of evil. Oh, it's a pretty good explanation to how that little dinky wooden shield could stand up to so much punishment I put it through. So young Link takes the Kokurai sword from Mido, who still can't stand Link even after he just saved his life. No, you're the jerk, Mido! And he uses the sword to carve the Deku shield out of the remains of the Great Deku Tree. Yeah, that definitely didn't make it in the game version. So young Link starts to leave the forest in search of the princess. However, on his way out, he runs into Saria one last time, who is waiting to say goodbye to Link. Link confides in Saria that he has always known that he felt different from the rest of the Kokurai, like he was from somewhere else, and that he can't wait to see the world. And this is also the time Saria gives him her ocarina, telling him to remember her and the forest whenever he plays it. Yeah, pretty much the same as in the game version, except this one includes a little song and dance that they do together. How sweet! When he leaves the forest, we see that he is being watched over from a distance by the wise owl, Kapora Gabora, as opposed to directly giving advice to Link as we see in the game. Okay, well, that about wraps it up for episode 1 of our series. We had a few decent changes to this version when compared to that of the game. Let me know what you think about these changes, your favorite scenes, or any other comments you have. And don't forget to like and subscribe to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching my video, everyone.